Good evening. It's Thursday the 23rd of October and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Military offensive. Myanmar's junta reclaims Kyaukme after days of fierce resistance and relentless airstrikes. Energy sanctions. The US escalates economic pressure on Moscow with new sanctions targeting Russian oil giants. Student innovation. Engineering students pioneer robotic prosthetics powered by artificial intelligence.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Prithika Sivakumar.
Good evening and thank you once again for joining us on World News Tonight on Derana News channel. The military of Kyaukme in northern Shan state has been reclaimed by the junta after just a 3-week offensive following months of rebel control by the Tang National Liberation Army since August 2024. The campaign, backed by airstrikes and external support from China, marks a significant shift in the conflict.
Kyaukme lies on the key trade corridor Asian Highway 14, connecting China's border with the interior of Myanmar. Its capture by the TNLA last year was viewed as a major blow to the military's morale. The junta's rapid recapture in only 3 weeks signals a marked reversal of the battlefield balance. The military's offensive featured intensive airstrikes, drone surveillance, and heavy artillery pounding rebel positions and infrastructure around Kyaukme. Many buildings were destroyed and residents displaced as the campaign sought to reclaim urban and rural terrain from the TNLA. China's role and implications on this, as analysts say, was that China intervened to bolster the junta and pressure ethnic armed groups, prioritizing regional stability and control of the border. The recapture of Kyaukme may bolster the military's claim of consolidating power ahead of elections, but large parts of Myanmar remain contested, and the conflict is far from over.
A massive fire tore through Happyland Tondo in Manila on September 13, 2025, destroying hundreds of makeshift dwellings and displacing more than 1,100 families. The blaze began in the evening, burned for many hours, and prompted large-scale evacuations, while authorities and aid groups mobilized to help survivors.
The fire ignited in closely packed compound buildings and raced through shanty-style houses made from light, highly flammable materials. Narrow lanes and dense construction hampered firefighters' access, allowing flames to leap between structures and forcing a prolonged response that lasted through the night. Human toll and response was, as local officials say, over 1,100 families lost homes and were sheltered in nearby covered courts and schools. Initial reports indicated no large-scale fatalities, but several injuries and large property losses. Manila's disaster and fire authorities, with volunteers and the Red Cross, coordinated relief and temporary housing. Investigators have opened probes, and possible electrical faults or accidental ignition are being examined, while arson units have not ruled anything out. Experts and past reporting warn that recurring large fires in Manila's crowded districts reflect long-standing gaps in fire safety enforcement, electrification standards, and housing conditions.
North Korea says it has successfully tested 2 hypersonic projectiles, calling them part of a new strategic weapons system. The launches detected from near Pyongyang and striking targets inland in the northeast drew sharp condemnation from the US and EU, each calling the test unlawful and destabilizing.
North Korea announced Thursday that it successfully test-fired 2 hypersonic projectiles, describing them as part of a new and important weapons system. According to the Korean Central News Agency, the 2 projectiles were launched the day before from Yeokpo District in Pyongyang toward the northeast and hit their intended target on the Gwaesang Peak tableland in Orang County, North Hamgyong Province. The KCNA said the test was part of the country's broader defense capability development program, designed to strengthen the sustainability and effectiveness of what Pyongyang calls its strategic deterrence against potential enemies. While top military officials were at the test site to observe, the regime's leader Kim Jong-un was not. This marks the first ballistic missile test by North Korea in 167 days since the regime fired multiple short-range missiles, including the Hwasong-11 on May 8th. It also comes just days before the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Gyeongju, where leaders from South Korea, the United States, and China are expected to discuss the North's growing missile threats. In response, the United States condemned the launches, calling them unlawful and destabilizing. A spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Defense said Washington is closely consulting with South Korea, Japan, and regional allies following the test, reaffirming America's ironclad security commitment to its partners in Northeast Asia. The spokesperson added that the U.S. strongly urges Pyongyang to refrain from further provocations. In Europe, EU Foreign Affairs spokesperson Anita Hipper also condemned the missile tests on social media, calling them a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions. She stated that North Korea must cease all unlawful actions that threaten peace and security, return to diplomacy, and fulfill its international obligations. The latest test underscores heightened tensions on the Korean Peninsula as Pyongyang seeks to demonstrate its military capabilities ahead of key international discussions.
Western Sydney International Airport has commenced its operational readiness program ahead of its planned 2026 opening, including trial flights, baggage system tests, and multi-agency emergency drills. The facility aims to handle domestic, international, and cargo services as Australia's first 24-hour airport free of curfews.
A tiny plane on a giant runway. 12 seats today, but thousands each and every day by the end of next year.
This is when the rubber hits the road. This is when it gets exciting.
This twin-engine Cessna running through flight paths as baggage services were taken for a test drive.
We've set up a whole lot of dummy flights, and the whole art to this is actually connecting people with their bags.
A sea of suitcases, 1,800 pieces of luggage all up, headed to different corners of the world. Today's operation deemed a success and a crucial step before Sydney becomes a two-airport city.
I think July might be ambitious. Let's say second half of next year.
But so far, only 4 airlines have signed on.
We don't expect that there will be millions and millions of passengers on day one, so this is really, a ramping up to make sure we're ready.
The new airport will be the first in Australia without a traditional air traffic control tower. Today's flight checks ensured obstacles were accurately marked, and the light plane will next week make way for a large jet. The metro from Bradfield via the airport to St Mary's won't be ready for up to 12 months after the airport begins operations. So if you're planning to be one of the first to fly out, you might just have to drive or catch the bus.
Let's go in for a short commercial break. More world news coming right after this. Welcome back. In a bold escalation of pressure, President Trump's administration has announced sweeping new sanctions targeting Russia's major energy firms, Rosneft and Lukoil, the first such measures in his second term. The move aims to strangle Kremlin funding for the Ukraine war and force Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table.
The Russian attacks are relentless. Even this kindergarten in the eastern city of Kharkiv was targeted in a new wave of attacks. The children inside were evacuated and all escaped serious injury, but in strikes elsewhere, at least 7 people were killed, including 2 kids. The Kremlin flexing its might in Ukraine. And on home soil, its strategic nuclear forces launching test missiles in the country's northwest. Peace feeling increasingly out of reach, and it's angered the US president, who has been demanding an immediate ceasefire, pushing him to order new sanctions against Moscow.
I just felt it was time. These are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their 2 big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long.
Support for Ukraine top of the agenda when Donald Trump and his administration officials met with NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte.
What the President is doing today with these sanctions is putting more pressure, of course, on both parties, in this case on Russia.
It comes a day after Trump cancelled a second face-to-face summit with his Russian counterpart. That was to be held in Budapest, Hungary.
It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I cancelled it.
Trump reiterated his belief Putin wants long-term peace, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was in Sweden signing a deal for new fighter jets, disagrees, declaring Russia's diplomatic efforts are only intended to delay decisions. We are ready for diplomacy, but not on the condition that we must withdraw from somewhere, giving the aggressor our land.
Russia announced a major training exercise of its strategic nuclear forces, including launches from land, sea and air, coming a day after Donald Trump delayed a summit with Vladimir Putin over the Ukraine war. Meanwhile, Ukraine is advancing talks with Sweden to acquire up to 150 Gripen jets.
The head of the NATO alliance on Wednesday said he had, quote, total confidence that U.S. President Donald Trump could deliver peace for Ukraine.
He's the only one who can get this done.
Secretary General Mark Rutte made the comments on a visit to Washington, where he echoed Trump's support for an immediate ceasefire.
I totally agree with him. Stop where you are. That's the main message.
But Moscow signaled something different. The Kremlin published video of what it said were drills involving nuclear weapons, including practice launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles. Russian President Vladimir Putin has issued reminders of Russia's nuclear might as a warning to Kyiv and its Western allies at key moments in the war. The exercises come a day after the U.S. said it had paused plans for a meeting between Putin and Trump focused on Ukraine. That was the latest twist in months of stalled diplomacy. Putin and Trump spoke last week and unexpectedly announced they would hold a summit in Hungary that the Kremlin said could take place within a couple of weeks. But then the U.S. leader said he supported an immediate ceasefire along the current battle lines. Moscow insists Kyiv must cede more territory before talks can begin. That may have left little room for progress.
I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time, so I'll see what happens.
Ukraine's leader was not waiting around for negotiations to begin. President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Sweden, maker of the Gripen's warplane. Stockholm has said it signed a letter of intent to export the fighter jets to Ukraine, as European governments boost Kyiv's defenses in a war that has ground on for more than 3.5 years since Russia's full-scale invasion and shows no sign of ending soon.
Overnight, Ukraine endured a massive wave of Russian drone strikes hitting 10 regions, including Kyiv, leaving at least 6 dead, among them 2 children. President Zelensky blamed Vladimir Putin for prolonging conflict as a planned US-Russia summit was abruptly cancelled by Donald Trump, accusing Moscow of escalating attacks.
With flames lapping at their sides, adults ferry the children to safety. A deadly Russian drone hit their kindergarten just before 11 a.m. on Wednesday. Thankfully, the air raid alarm sounded in time and nearly everyone was able to shelter in the basement. Parents saw the strike from afar and rushed over.
When I entered the yard, I saw a fire truck and the roof was on fire. Everything was burning. I pushed the rescuers aside and reached for my child.
Ukraine's Air Force said Russia launched over 400 drones and 28 missiles into the territory overnight, targeting energy infrastructure and high-rise residential buildings. Firefighters worked to extinguish strike after strike in the capital and surrounds. This woman fled her building as it was on fire.
There was a zzz sound, and then it suddenly started to speed up and boom. I jumped up, glad that my little one wasn't in the room where the windows were blown out.
Other parents were not so lucky. Among the victims were a 6-month-old and a 12-year-old. According to Volodymyr Zelensky, the attacks that hit 10 Ukrainian regions were more proof Russia is dragging out the war.
Russian words about diplomacy mean nothing as long as the Russian leadership does not feel critical problems. And this can be ensured only through sanctions, long-range capabilities, and coordinated diplomacy among all our partners.
Zelensky conceded on Wednesday that stopping the fighting at the current front lines, as proposed by the US president, would be a good compromise to begin negotiations. However, Donald Trump suggested on Tuesday a meeting with Vladimir Putin could be a waste of time, casting even more uncertainty on the next steps. The Kremlin claimed preparations for the presidential summit were continuing.
In a landmark ruling, a Colombian appeals court has overturned the 12-year house arrest conviction of former President Álvaro Uribe for fraud and witness tampering. It was the first ever conviction of a Colombian ex-president. The decision cited structural flaws in the original trial and may be appealed further.
He had faced 12 years of home confinement, but now former Colombian President Álvaro Uribe is a free man as an appeals court overturned his conviction for witness tampering and procedural fraud. Uribe, who served as president between 2002 and 2010, was sentenced to 12 years of house arrest in August after a 6-month trial. The 73-year-old, who denies any wrongdoing, thanked his supporters for standing by him.
The only thing I can tell you is I have told the truth to my fellow citizens throughout my long public life. I ask Providence to give me all the nobility to fight for this great people, to whom I am very proud to belong, the great Colombian people.
Uribe had been accused by left-wing Senator Ivan Cepeda of ties to paramilitary groups responsible for human rights violations. He was then found guilty of asking jailed paramilitary members to lie about their association with him. Cepeda said the case was far from closed.
We will appeal to the Supreme Court, and we will also consider other contexts such as the inter-American human rights system, if applicable. We haven't made that decision yet, but we understand it is also a possibility.
Uribe remains a popular figure among the right in Colombia for having waged a long war against drug cartels and leftist guerrillas during his time in office. But his critics say many of the methods he used to fight those battles were of dubious legality.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more world news. Welcome back. At California State University Northridge, engineering students are pushing boundaries using artificial intelligence to develop advanced robotic prosthetics. The hands-on project showcases how young innovators are transforming healthcare technology and opening new futures for amputees.
Wow, thumbs up. At California State University Northridge, students are working to perfect the art of robotics.
Pointing to something, peace sign.
That is incredible. All the way down to the joints and ligaments.
It has these supports, these fibers that we have in our human hand.
They're creating arms with one model after another, inching closer to full mobility. But most surprising of all, they're giving prosthetics a hand by making the most of our toes. Developing new prosthetics is more important than ever. One group estimates 500 people lose limbs every day in America. Meanwhile, some studies estimate 44% of amputees stop using their prosthesis. But what if you could control how an artificial hand worked by using those little digits on your feet? And to practice that fancy, fine motor skill footwork, they're using virtual reality. All of this tied together by AI, which is helping design a more user-friendly prosthesis. The school is backed by software giant Autodesk, and they've contributed millions to open the new Autodesk Technology Engagement Center, and the university's president is hoping these models could enter the market in a matter of years.
Tonight, we bring a remarkable story of medical ingenuity and human spirit. A 65-year-old retired speech and language therapist, Denise Bacon, diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2014, underwent a vague deep brain stimulation surgery at King's College Hospital in London, where she played her clarinet mid-operation to help surgeons assess real-time improvements in her motor function.
It's a story you have to hear to believe. What sounds more like a symphony than a surgery. That's 65-year-old Denise Bacon serenading her surgeons as they operate on her brain. You heard correctly. Doctors in London are stimulating her brain with electrical impulses. And almost instantly, she feels improvement in her finger movements.
We insert electrodes deep inside the brain at very particular target points.
You see, Bacon has Parkinson's disease, stiff muscles, slow movement, difficulty walking and swimming. And for 5 excruciating years until this moment, she was unable to play her beloved clarinet.
I contacted him nearer the time and said, "Do you really want me to bring my clarinet?" And the message was that yes, he did, and he'd be able to test whether it would help me.
And did it ever?
She has a personalized treatment that's going to last her many decades to come.
It's not the first time brain surgery patients have had music on their mind. In 2018, Robert Alvarez jammed on the guitar as doctors worked to remove his brain tumor at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Texas.
Picking up the guitar, it just feels like Thor picking up his hammer.
And in 2020, as surgeons removed another brain tumor, this time in the UK, their patient, again, providing the soundtrack. With the help of modern medicine, what was once unthinkable is now a new normal for Denise Bacon, and doctors tell her it's here to stay.
I can walk normally. I was walking normally straight after the surgery. And life's just opened up again. It feels like there's a future.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes of seeing you again, I'm Pritika Sivakumar, and we'll leave you tonight with the visuals of Cubans keeping salsa spirit alive through terrace classes. Also, don't forget to send us your feedback through email at feedback.ad, ncenglish@derana.lk, or via WhatsApp at 076-805-7933. Thank you for watching World News Tonight on Other Derana News channel. Have a very good night.